Hey, good afternoon, LinkedIn. Dave Wilson, Results Staffing and Social Media. I got a great guest here right after this video, Mr. Hugh Gallagher, and we will be right back after this message. What do you think of that opening?
That was awesome. That was cool.
I love that stuff. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Today, happy Friday, but I'm very excited to have a great colleague, and it's Mr. Hugh Gallagher. He's the president of Gallagher Search Group over in Allentown, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of great professional services and executive and consulting. How you doing, Hugh?
I'm good, David. Thanks for having me.
Good. Hey, do you want to just introduce yourself and what you've done and everything in your career, Hugh?
Sure. As you had said, my name is Hugh Gallagher. I'm the president of the Gallagher Search Group here in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We're a professional search group, and I use the term professional search to distinguish between staffing, which we don't do, and executive search, which we do some of, but it's not all we do. Most of what we do is mid-career through the C-suite, and we do it across a variety of industries. And, we're looking at a situation now coming out of COVID, hopefully. I know we're going to touch on that a little bit, but we're looking at a situation where, and this applied before, great companies, any company is struggling to find difference-making talent. You can find people to keep a seat warm, maybe, but difference-making talent really is what helps you smash your numbers and grow your business the way you want to grow it. And that's where we come in. You can post jobs and you can look for people on job boards and maybe get lucky and someone applies when you're looking, and that's great. But frankly, luck is not a strategy. And what we do is we take our strategies and our processes that we've been doing. I just posted on LinkedIn earlier this week. I was updating my daily journal, and I looked at the date when I was writing it. I was like, wow, started this thing 26 years ago. That's pretty cool. So I've been doing this a long time, and it's been fun. But we take our processes and we take our networks, and we put them to work for our clients, and we make them the focal point of where this needs to go. What do they need to make their companies go? What are they missing where they're not hitting the numbers they need to?
Right.
And it was a challenge pre-COVID. In a lot of ways, in a lot of industries, it really hasn't changed. It's still a challenge. Talent's still really hard to find.
It is. And I want to tell everybody how I met you. And I remember it was at an event, networking event in Easton, and I was introduced to you, and I like how you gave me a lot of advice. You didn't even really know me, but you talked to me, you gave me a lot of advice, and you did say this. I said about networking. You said, I am at my job. This is a job. And when you said that, I look back and I say, I understand it now, because the last 2 years has been, I see the importance of networking.
Right.
Because some of the skill set that you do, I can imagine, because I'm not in that league right there, but it's got to, you have to network, I'm sure.
Well, it's about certainly establishing credibility. You need to know what you're doing. That's certainly, without that, it doesn't really matter. But the better networked you are, the more resources you have at your disposal to tap on. And, I think there's a perception that, we get a search assignment from a client, and, we go in a drawer, we fire up a database, and out come the resumes, and we just send an invoice. And obviously, if it was that easy, they wouldn't need us, and And it really is that when we're sitting down with a client for the first time and they're talking about what they need and why they need it, and what's worked for them in the past and what hasn't worked for them, we really dial into what their needs are and focus the search specifically on that. And while we're talking, I'm thinking, and my wife Christine is thinking, who should we be talking to? Who are our first 10 calls? Who are our first 20 calls?
Right.
Not that any of those people maybe are fits for this job. Maybe they are, but the majority of the folks we place aren't looking.
Right.
They're what, we call passive job seekers. And these are folks that are happy, they're employed, they're highly engaged in their job. And we catch them on a certain day and say, hey, I'm looking for this. And you get some of these buying signs in return. Oh, tell me more, or I might be interested, or something like that. And it really, and then the dialogue goes from there. But these folks aren't looking, so they require a different, I don't want to say sales pitch, but a different approach, for sure.
It does. And because we were just talking about before, and listen, I thought direct hires was easy. I really did, but you do go through struggles. I struggled, I would say, is you do have to know what you're staffing for. Yeah. When I said like I would look like I could find medical people, and engineers, but when I backed off of that because I really didn't understand the position. So it wasn't, hey, hi, my name's Dave. Well, you want a job. I would have had to give it to somebody because they understand what they're looking for, the wording and what to say. Have you noticed with COVID, how did that affect you pre-COVID and now, Hugh? Like, what have you seen and adjusted in candidates?
Sure. I mean, pre-COVID, we were first quarter of 2020, we had our best quarter ever. And then like everyone in the country, we hit a wall and it was over. And it was done for a while. I mean, it was got sometime late summer until things really started picking back up. And we had a pretty decent third into fourth quarter. Now, typically in our world, in the search business, things slow a little bit over the holidays. It's right. Like the hiring goes away, but other priorities, holiday cocktail parties and Christmas lunches and all the stuff that we didn't do this year anyway, but typically that happens. It normally slows down. This year we didn't have those things, but we had an uptick in COVID, so things slowed down with that.
Right.
But we got back into January and it was like gangbusters. I mean, we're super busy. We have a whole bunch of opportunities. I mean, great opportunities with good clients that are paying good. Everyone, we were talking off screen, everyone's having to maybe up their pay a little bit, but just up their offering. They need to bring more to the table and make their opportunity compelling.
Well, that's how do you convince the customer of that? Like, Hugh, like I know exactly what you're saying, which I've talked about, and even logistics, or even like say HVAC technicians.
Sure.
Majority of them are employed, and I get that now because for my neighbor to take somebody who's got 15 years, convince them to move somewhere else, do you see yourself trying to educate the client saying, listen, this is what has to be done in order to get somebody?
Well, it's interesting, David, because we had before this uptick, and I'm happy with it. These are good problems to have, but they're still problems. But before this, every new client we would sit down with, we would have this dialogue and say, okay, you need someone. We're probably not finding you an unemployed person.
Right.
So this person, arguably, if you're hiring a good person, and that's why we're here, is going to be employed. They're going to be happy. They're going to be successful. Why is that happy, employed, successful person going to leave where they're at and come work for you? And I will say to the client, I don't care what your answer is, but you better know it, because if you don't know it, I don't know it. And if I don't know it, I can't sell it. This has to be genuine. I don't want to make this about sales, but it's certainly, there's a famous trainer in the search business by the name of Greg Savage. And he talks about the wooing and the engagement of candidates. And it's a little over the top in the fact that he's either South African or Australian, but he speaks with a bit of a British accent.
Right.
It gets really quite comical hearing him say it, but he's right. You have to show them a little bit of love, and you have to entice ethically, present it honestly. But yes, you're looking to say, hey, what's going to make you leave this good job that you have.
Right.
And perhaps look at something else. And then we're going to speak to that. We're going to speak to that from the candidate side, and we're going to speak to that from the client side, from the company side.
Well, what I noticed and going through this whole process is I find some candidates, let's just say for customer service, I really feel they're a fit. They might not, I always went by like if it's 50, 60%, at least met that. And then I found some clients that would constantly say no and no. And then I would go back and say, listen, I'm having a hard time because not everybody was going to leave a job, or they're missing one software skill. And I kept saying, why wouldn't they train? But how do you take the process of a candidate? If you feel they're a really good fit, do you go back to the client?
It's case by case. It definitely we do, but it's case by case. They know what they need. And if we've worked with them in the past, you build yourself a little bit of credibility. You can play some of those chips a little more aggressively. I remember, and now it's probably 15 years ago, we had a girl that we placed with a company, and she was in, I want to say, like Westchester, New York.
Right.
And her most recent job, she was a nanny. And obviously, we were placing her as a nanny.
Right.
Now, the job before made her interesting for this role. And she had an unbelievable personality, strong skill set. But when you look at that resume, the top thing says nanny, you do have to sell a little bit. And I said to the VP of sales, and we're still very, very good friends. I said to him, Larry, I said, call her. So yell at me, don't talk to me again. Call her and let me know what you think.
Right.
Hired her. This girl was President's Club her first few years there. She was an absolute rock star for him. And yes, if you have a relationship, you can play that. If you're not that deep in with a client, you kind of have to follow their lead, and it is frustrating.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because we end up with a lot of clients that are, for lack of a better phrase, tire kicking. Right. They want to hire someone, but the building's not really on fire. They're not. It's not a growth hire. It's not a replacement hire. They feel they need someone, but because there's no real stress in that hire, they just continually interview. And it makes it seem like we're missing the point on the candidate skill set or the cultural fit or whatever, wherever we're missing it. They're just not as invested in the process as they need to be for us to be successful. And that's okay too, but we need to learn to wean those folks out too.
Did you find, like with COVID right now, and let's just say for your executive search, do you have candidates that are moving now, coming out of the cities, looking for work, or is it still just around? I know you do everywhere, but I was wondering if people are coming from the city out to you or looking for work.
It's kind of one of those you reap what you sow type things.
Right.
We're never really advertising. Well, we don't advertise, but we're never rolling the banners out saying, "Hey, candidates, come to us."
Right.
Ours is a two-sided sale, but because the client, the company, is paying the fee, we're structuring our searches around their needs and what they need, and those are specific. So once we know what that is, we then go find the people. So as far as movement, yes, there's definitely been some.
Right.
There's definitely been some, but it's not something we see because we don't look for it.
Right.
I think if we look for it, we probably see it more.
And they reach out. How do you I know you said like networking, and do you utilize a lot of the job boards? Now, I get stressed at job boards because I want the ROI, like I had Career Builder, and I just was upset with it because I know COVID, everybody says COVID. And I didn't find job boards as productive as I thought they would be for middle management. I just couldn't get the candidates. No,
and I think you're right. We have utilized job boards in the past, and we do utilize them presently, but it's more for source material. It's very rare you're finding a direct candidate on a job board and then, moving that person into a interview queue with a client.
Right.
In most cases, we're looking at a job board and I see Dave's name on there, so I call Dave, and Dave gives me Mary's name, Mary gives me Bill's name, Bill gives me Jim's name. Jim might be Jim might be a candidate. So yes,
right.
Did Jim come from that job board? I guess indirectly, but that's not, Yeah, it's just, we use them mostly for source material. Same thing with LinkedIn. We use it's just a bigger and a more focused pool.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's people to talk to in the space that you need to talk to.
And that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Bill, all the way from Pittsburgh. Bill, you need to connect with you. I'm telling you, Bill, he comes on my shows all the time. He's out in Pittsburgh, great colleague. He comes on all the shows, and his daughter just found a job too, but she did a video resume screening with ourselves.
Oh, great.
And we were trying to locate a job, but I had a hard time. And Bill knows is trying to do something different with the video resume screening and assessment. She really did well, through the whole process, but trying to get companies to change a little bit to accept it. It was a struggle, but she did find a job now, which I'm happy, but it's different. And a lot of people would just not take the change, Oh, he's heading to Bethlehem. All right, Bill, I didn't know you were coming from Pittsburgh. So I wanted to ask you, how do I say this here? Let me see. Here we go. What do you feel the trend right now for the next month or two and into the summer is going to be with direct hires? Do you see an increase in the Lehigh Valley area, or?
There's definitely some pent up demand for sure. There was, like I said, when first quarter last year, the economy was white hot, and COVID hit everything, but didn't hit everything evenly. There are certain sectors, the hospitality and transportation, that it's going to be a while until they recover. And when they recover, it's probably going to look a little bit different than what we're used to or have been used to. But the vast majority of industries, though, David, I think really aren't changing all that much. They've maybe had to figure out, all right, how are we hiring remotely, or how are we onboarding remotely, or training remotely, or how are we doing this relative to COVID regulations? And so the good news is, the bad news is this has been around for a year. The good news is it's been around for a year. And most of these companies have figured this out, and they're moving forward with what their needs are. And I expect that to continue for a while. I mean, the economy was really, really humming along. And like I said, we are getting slammed with real, for lack of a better phrase, like meaty job orders. These are good jobs. They're paying really solid money. For the longest time, employers were in the catbird seat, and when there were far fewer jobs than candidates, they could offer a fraction of what a candidate should be getting for a job, or they could ask for a candidate basically to do their job in another half or their job in another job.
Right.
And they were getting away with it for, God, the better part of like 10, 12 years.
Right. And
the pendulum in the last couple of years swung back in favor of the candidate, and to the point we were talking on earlier. These companies have had to up their game. They've had to make themselves compelling and really compete for talent out there. And that's been, it's been good. I think everyone wins. I think it sharpens things on the company side. And obviously it allows them to cast a wider and deeper net for a better talent pool.
Right. And then how do you see companies, I look at, let's just say I'll go back to like HVAC and middle collar, blue collar workers. Do you see them training like a skill trade of going on the job and training at all? You know what I mean? Like they meet 50%, take them and they'll train, or not?
I haven't seen that yet. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. What's happening oftentimes because of the growth in some of these organizations, and speaking specifically to HVAC,
right?
If we have an HVAC tech, we can place him. We can place him 6 places tomorrow.
Right.
And that's a good place to be for an HVAC tech.
Right.
The problem is the companies are so, I hate the word desperate, but they need people.
Right.
And they're running thin. So they don't really have the time to train. It's kind of a vicious circle, but they don't have the time to train because they're spread so thin with trying to service what they're servicing.
For that part, I see what you're saying there now. I didn't even think about it like that because of, let's face it, a lot of the companies, a lot of people are working 10, 12 hours. I've seen it when they're called.
Yeah, I don't think it's an unwillingness to train. I think they're just frankly spread so thin that the time's not there. They need people to pick up quickly, quickly as possible. So to your example of the 50% and train them, maybe 85% and train them. Like they'll train, but it better be a small gap and it better be a short time frame.
Right. Do you see the unemployment and with the stimulus, and I'm going to talk about like logistics here for a second, and you see it. You've been in the industry for 20 years and you've seen the valley. But I continue to see, like over in Peterborough, another 1.2 million square foot warehouses, Albertus, all these logistics centers. And I'm trying to figure out where they're going to find all the people. You can't right now. I was telling you, I predicted, I knew it would hit up to $25 an hour. And that happened in Easton on Friday. Well, it starts on Monday to a company. And I'm like, wow, they can't sustain that kind of pay. I mean, it's going to have a really big effect. But what do you see with the importance of logistics and what's coming in now, the supply and demand?
It's getting harder and harder because, again, we've been doing almost the flip side. We've been getting slammed on the construction side.
Oh, really?
Construction professionals. We'll do some skilled tradesmen, but more estimators, project managers, superintendents. These are high 5, low 6-figure jobs. I mean, these are like I said, these are big boy jobs, and we're getting slammed with those in the logistics space. So they want someone that built these million and a half square foot facilities and oversaw this and that. So that we're seeing that demand on that end of it. And it does beg the question, where are the people that are going to work for coming from? We're not, this is why I think, and why it excites me to be in this business, because demographically, we're not replenishing the numbers of the baby boomers retiring.
Right.
So we're looking, I think, at we're talking like multiple decades worth of shortages that, yes, some will absolutely be patched with increased efficiency and technology for sure.
And that'll make it.
But the humans, you'll still need the humans.
That's it. And I learned a lot with direct hires. And boy, I tell you, I don't do that tire wood like that until that hurts sometimes. People don't realize, now I have, and the experience that I realize is I listen to the candidate because some of them might have a bad day. And I'm like, why do you want to leave? And then it never works out for me because, oh no, I'm okay now. Then 3 weeks later, did you find me something? I'm like, I've learned not to get excited until that signed deal is hit, because some of the excuses, and everybody has them, but I get ghosted. I get a lot of issues with candidates, and these are good jobs, and I can never figure out why they don't want to follow through with it. But that's what I've been finding. It's
frustrating, and you'd like to believe that that's relative to a certain rung on the economic ladder. It's not.
It's not.
It happens less as you go north, but it doesn't go away. And, so the stuff you're frustrated at with people making $20, $25 an hour, is the same thing with, that's what, $52,000 a year. That still happens at $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 roles.
I didn't think it would, though.
It doesn't vanish magically when you get to a certain threshold. It's reduced. It's a lower number, but it doesn't vanish.
That's exactly, you got my words there, because I was like, I thought it would be different. I really did. I didn't realize how much work it took to get that one or two people. And then how to get them through the whole process with COVID and everything.
Well, and I'm sorry, I was going to say a lot of it is managing, I don't say managing expectations with the client, but explaining the process that, if you're working with a new client that's never done direct hire before, and they may think, well, I'm going to give you a job order, I'm going to give you the specs you're looking for, and you're going to hand me a list of people. No, I'm going to specifically get you maybe one or two, and you better look long and hard at them, because I'm going to have to move the moon and the stars to get you 1 and 2.
Right.
If you think there's 9 behind them, this isn't going to really go well.
No, I can't even imagine. And I wanted to talk to you about the social media part of myself. Is I really thought, I'm not going to say I failed at it, but it's just taken longer. Like I could find somebody like within a month on social media, because a lot of people say, upper management, all the higher ups they're not on social media, but they are under they don't put their names out there. They put fake accounts. You can find them, but it just takes, no matter how skilled I've been at social media, I continue to try. and you might get one, but it's very hard on social media, to get that upper management positions. I just can't find them.
It's a challenge. There's not directories. It's not just smile and dial. It's being able to, and this is going back to what I was speaking of earlier with the networking.
Right.
You've got to be able to resource yourself into certain areas. I have a proposal with a potential new client out right now, and I had called a business associate that I've known for quite some time who now works for that company. And I said, hey, do you work with this guy? And I knew he did. And I said, we're talking, any help would be appreciated. Hey, no problem. That'd be great. I said, awesome. I'm not asking for miracles, but sometimes, part of this is developing a reputation. Part of this is being competent and being able to provide and anyone can tell you can do it, go do it.
Right.
And then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again, and do it for a long time. That's where you establish some real credibility in this world. And that's why when you get those types of people on the phone, they take your call. They say, sure, I have no problem. There's no reluctance. So if you're going at it from kind of a cold scenario where you don't know the person to start with and you don't have someone to get you some way in there,
right?
You can still do it, but man, it's a numbers game, and you better start with a big funnel at the top.
Yeah, because I think you said exactly right. For someone like ourselves, it's not easy. It is not, and I know you got over like 20 years of experience. What made you, Hugh? What made you get into staffing?
It's interesting. I had worked better part of like 5-6 years right out of college. I worked in the insurance industry, and
1832. 1832, your school, Gettysburg College. I had to look at that picture. Sorry, I had to interrupt you, but I was curious. What the hell? I got a lot of views of your premiere. What that looked like, the White House.
Yeah, it's their administration building. It's Pennsylvania Hall there, but that actually served as a hospital during the Civil War, which is kind of cool. Whew. And again, we're talking old, but graduated from Gettysburg and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a business degree, and I ended up working. I had an insurance sales job for a little bit, doing life insurance and mutual funds. And that the office I liked doing it, but the office I was in at the time was under a little bit of upheaval. Right. And I ended up taking a job working in property and casualty claims for an insurance carrier, and had a 5-year run there and liked it. But I wanted to get more into a role where I could control my own income. Right. And, so now we're talking back to 1995. I saw there was an ad in the Philadelphia Inquirer, and this was back when they had newspaper ads and sections of advertising and positions. And small little ad for a firm in Malvern that they were hiring for an insurance recruiter. And I was like, I've worked in this field for 5 years. I should know something. Amazing. When you start recruiting, you realize how little you know about certain industries.
That's so true.
You know your job, but that's about it. You don't know how everything else works. And it was a great experience. And then I had a long run with a firm here in Allentown. I was super successful with that. Basically the number 2 guy there for the better part of 10 years. And there were some fits and starts a little bit before we started our own company. And we've been doing this for sneaking up on like 7.5 years, which has been crazy. But really, it's been awesome. It was the best thing we ever did. I thank my wife for kicking me in that direction.
I can imagine. I enjoy helping people. And I think that's why I like recruitment. I get when I place somebody, and you see when they got the job, they're excited no matter what age. Right. It doesn't matter.
Well, and if you think about it, David, the best part, I've done this when I've managed people. I've done this when I've done some consulting and coaching, in the recruiting space. Our job, when we're doing it right, is the best job on earth. We're helping a company get some talent they desperately need. We're helping a candidate get a new job that's a better career path for them, and we get paid. We get paid pretty well. Right. So I mean, it's a great situation. Now, it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, but
I know
it's super rewarding on all of those ends, because it really, to this day, I'll bump into people that I placed years ago, or I'll get a message. Hey, I don't know if you remember me. I worked with you back in 2008. I'm like, what? And,
Well,
thanks so much for everything you did for me. And it's cool. It's really, that part is super rewarding. The financial part's awesome, but knowing that you really helped change some people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, without sounding super self-important, but you played a very small role in changing their trajectory.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
It is. And I got one more question for you is, I know you were really big on like networking. That's what I learned from you. You always kept telling me to network. And I want to thank you, because with you is I could always pick up a phone, call them, leave a message. And that's what's nice about having colleagues, because I've learned from you. I've reached out to you twice, and you spoke with me for 30 minutes out of your time. And I appreciate that. But last question here would be is, what do you do now without the networking, like physical, going to a place? What do you see there happening?
It has to be more intentional. And the Zoom stuff, it's fine. It's frankly, I hate it. I'm just not a big fan. And you do it because you have to do it. But you have to be more intentional, and you have to look and say, hey, there are some relationships that I either built up or was working on building up.
Right.
Just because I can't see them in person doesn't mean that stops. Shoot them a text. Hey, would love to catch up. It doesn't have to be salesy. It doesn't have to be even all that much business. Just wanted to call. How you doing? How's all this shaking out for you? Because you don't know the answer to that.
Right.
You might think you know it, but you don't know the answer to that.
Right.
And it's amazing. You make a handful of those calls a week. That's going to beget other activity for you. That's going to spin off other calls. It's going to spin off other activities. It's going to spin off other ideas also.
Well, exactly, because that's what I learned, because with everything going on, I kept saying I didn't want to just blame it on COVID. I got tired of that. All right, COVID, but you better figure something out around that way. And naturally, this, I told you, really helps me, because I meet so many people like all over the country now, and just talking, and the stuff that you can learn on LinkedIn, and it's amazing.
It's fantastic. There's so many resources out there: podcasts, LinkedIn, books. My God, if people are ignorant of a certain subject, it's by choice.
Right. Now, you do a lot of writings. You do a lot of postings. I've read some of them.
I don't do it as often as I should, but I try and get into a regular routine, and I've got to get better at it. But it's when things are going the right way, I'm doing it regularly.
Well, I've read them a lot, and I've always shared them. And you got an ability there that, you have the experience, and that's what it comes down to. Experience with your reputation. I can see, a lot of it I've learned is the reputation of yourself. How do you present yourself? Do you know? Are you asking the right questions? And those were things that I had to learn for direct hires.
Absolutely.
If you want that client, do they trust you? Like on a video now, do you trust me? That's a thing that, you always struggle with.
Well, it's funny, because I've said, for anyone I've ever trained, the bad part about our business is when you make a mistake, it's super costly.
Right.
The good part is you tend not to make them twice.
Yeah.
You tend not to be, so the frustrations you've gone through that you were speaking of,
right,
you learn from, like anything else in life.
Yeah.
Stove hot, don't touch.
Wow. Yeah. I've made a couple to where they said, there's only one person to kick. And it was me. I was like, man, I can't believe I spent that or did this. And I made a mistake one time. I was trying to find, everybody knew it. I was trying to find some CNC machinists, and I didn't know much about that. So I normally put a budget on my ads for social media, and I didn't. And I put it within a couple states. But the next time I got up in the morning, it was over $800. I'm like, oh my God. I didn't put a budget of 50 for it to stop. And it just kept going and going and going and going. I was like, I'll never do that again. But, that was a costly mistake for myself. But I want to take this time and really thank you for coming on the show. You've been a colleague of mine. And I put all the information up here, email, and how to contact you for clients. And, I did want to ask you one more question, though. Do you find it harder? Are clients coming to you now more than you're going after them pre-COVID, let's just say, or?
There's definitely some pain in the market with acquiring talent.
Right.
Companies are definitely struggling. and we're getting, I think, referred more.
Right. That's
So
what
I don't know if, I don't think people are Googling Allentown search firms and coming up with us. And I don't think, I know we're not pounding the phones, making outbound calls, but we've built relationships with folks over the years that just in the course of having business, they're doing business with a client of theirs, and they're at lunch or whatever with them, and they're freaking out because their controller just blew out of there, or some, whatever. The good news, they got a contract for a huge new contract, and bad news is they either need new production staff, or they need a new sales force, or they need to expand it, and they have to do it credibly, quickly, and it's places aren't set up to do that.
Right.
The best of the best internal recruiters really would struggle with that, and most are not the best of the best.
Right.
Most, and that's most are good and they're professional and they do their job with all they have, but they've never been trained to recruit. They're more processing paperwork, and that's okay. Right. It's still necessary. We've gotten to so crazy with regulations in our country that it is a full-time job just filling out forms to start a new job.
Right. No, I could imagine. But no, I want to thank you again, and please reach out. Connect with Hugh. He's a great colleague, and like I told him before, I want to thank you for taking my calls and giving me some advice, because it really does affect, and you might not realize it when you're talking to somebody, but it can change them. It can make them think differently. And try to make some sales and some wins there. So I want to thank you, Hugh, and everybody for being on the show. I'm going to send you over the YouTube link, Hugh, and that way you can have that. And I appreciate your time.
No, thanks. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're going to end it here with a video, and I'm going to talk to you a second right after.